what I'll get into in my section, which is definitely very real, is that there's definitely this underlying thing where it's like the government, did they know that this was going to happen? Did they, like, I think that's like the theme of the book is like the government kind of dropping the ball on this earthquake is going to happen. Are we preparing for it adequately enough? And what's interesting is that now that the technology has advanced to what it is like there are predictions for Japan, specifically around large earthquakes that could trigger other natural disasters such as tsunamis, or I believe Japan actually has like a handful of volcanoes, things like that, that could be activated if such a large earthquake were to take place. So I guess I will get into what I was going to talk about, which is what is an earthquake? I feel like I always knew the answer to this, but I didn't know how to eloquently explain it. So we're going to thank Michigan Tech for their helpful information on earthquakes, called Why Do Earthquakes Happen? And it goes on to say earthquakes are usually caused when rock underground suddenly breaks along a fault. The sudden release of energy causes seismic waves that make the ground shake. When two blocks of rock and two plates are rubbing against each other, they stick a little. They don't just slide smoothly. The rocks catch on each other, the rocks still pushing against each other but not moving. But after a while, that not moving builds up pressure, and when the rock breaks, that's when the earthquake occurs. During which during and after, the plates or blocks start moving, they continue to move until they become stuck again. So the spot underground where the rock breaks is called the focus of the earthquake. The place right above the top of the ground is called the epicenter of the earthquake. And I think the most scary thing about earthquakes is that they are the trigger for a lot of other issues. They are also have the capacity to be man-caused. So if like with drilling or interacting with the spot or the fault of the tectonic plates, if people have explosions underground, this can trigger seismic activity. We'll talk about this more when we cover the wave next week, but there is ways that humans can interact with these underground explosions, such as like, I guess if we have mines, if they collapse, roof of walls collapse, that can trigger like underground seismic activity. Not to the same extent of tectonic plates causing it, but it can also trigger it. And especially in areas that are coastal, like most of Japan, that can result in really like dangerous things. So why do earthquakes happen? The CDC outlines this as called staying safe during an earthquake. The section of their website, there are 3 necessary steps they say are almost always able to happen, which is to drop, cover, and hold on. They do go on to like kind of outline instances where this isn't a thing, specifically if you were outside, I believe in like tall buildings, stuff like that. But they outline that on the CDC website if you are interested. But essentially the drop down onto your hands, knees before the earthquake knocks you down. This position protects you from falling, but allows you to still move if necessary. Cover your head and neck and your entire body, if possible, underneath a sturdy table. We actually see this shown in the anime when the son hides under he tries to. He was in the hallway and he rushes to the dining room table to hide underneath so that nothing can fall on his head. Hold on to your shelter or to your head and neck until the shaking stops. Be prepared to move with your shelter if the shaking shifts around. There are instances where this is not possible. We kind of see in the anime that the daughter, she's in a room filled with lockers. There's nowhere to hide underneath. All these things kind of like fall onto her because of the magnitude of this earthquake. So there are some instances where, unfortunately, there's no real good thing you can do other than just try to hold and protect yourself as best as you can and hope that you're okay at the end of it, and then afterwards trying to find somewhere safe to go. But if you are interested, if you have a deep seated fear of earthquakes, and as I like to call them, earth shake murder, is one of the many ways that the earth can attack us. You can go to the CDC website and kind of learn more. But why does Japan make a lot of earthquake and natural disaster films? It's actually pretty spot on. To put it simply, it's because Japan experiences a lot of natural disasters, and It is situated in an area called the Pacific Ring of Fire, which is a string of volcanoes and site of lots of seismic activity that surround the edges of the Pacific Ocean. Pacific Ocean, not Pacific Ocean. Oh my gosh. It's to be expected that living in such an area would influence the media being created. According to National Geographic, roughly 90% of all earthquakes occur in the Ring of Fire, and the ring is dotted with about 75% of all active volcanoes, which I thought was terrifying on Earth. Being situated in this ring makes adapting to these kinds of natural disasters a part of everyday life and necessary for survival. In an article titled "Tokyo will probably face a massive earthquake in the next 30 years. The only thing they can do is prepare," written by Jake Sturmer and Yumi Asada. They go on through some of the many earthquakes Japan has experienced over the years, but also the very real risk that Japan is situated in with a large earthquake taking place in the next 30 years. It goes on to highlight the Tokyo Yokohama area, which is known by the Swiss reinsurance company, by far the most earthquake-threatened area, with potentially more than 30 million people affected. With this looming risk, the government has modeled potential impact of various earthquake scenarios, mostly with the understanding that thousands of people will die, and even more without preparation. So kind of the impact of these earthquakes will very much depend upon the preparation that takes place for the earthquake itself, but also the imminent threat of tsunami after said earthquake. Because once the seismic waves are released, it can affect, as we'll talk about next week, the impact of tsunamis. I said earlier, I've never experienced an earthquake firsthand. I believe the one that happened in Pennsylvania, I was in a car or asleep, and I did not know that they happened. And I still to this day have not felt the effects of an earthquake myself. And I will say it is 90% of the reason I'm like, no, I don't need to live in California. I don't want to know what that is. I don't know what it is. like I'm very scared of it. There's definitely many times I'm like, why on earth would anyone live under constant threat of weather murder? Like, I very much relate. I was like, humans used to be nomadic. I don't know if it was to avoid weather murder, but I feel like that was definitely a part of it. So in an article titled "Japan's Fantasy Films Act as a Buffer Against Reality in the Natural World," written by Thomas Santinel, he actually highlights Hayao Miyazaki, who does Spirited Away, Ponyo, a million other amazing films. But he kind of outlines why my fears are kind of silly, in that like this is stuff that happens naturally in the world. So in this article, he quotes Miyazaki saying, "There are many typhoons and earthquakes in Japan. There's no point in portraying these natural disasters as evil events. They are one of the givens of this world in which we live. I am always moved when I visit Venice to see that in this city, which is sinking into the sea, people are carrying on regardless. It is one of the givens of their life, in the same way that the people of Japan have a different perception of natural disasters." While that did not make me think like, hey, right now, I need to like adapt to weather murder at any point. Like, it is very true that like this is a natural thing. This is something the Earth is going to do with us or without us. Like, we are not the deciders of what the planet is going to do, and trying to manipulate the planet is not going to result in victory for us. Like, all that we can really do is prepare and adapt around these scenarios. And you kind of see in the anime that like sometimes it's gonna happen, like disaster's gonna happen regardless. If the government knew about the fact that Japan was going to sink, should they be preparing the population more? Yes. But you also have this idea that like panic and quality of life, if you're constantly terrified of these things, what would that be like? But I think it's really interesting, the perspective that Miyazaki presents, because it's honestly very real that there's a resiliency and like strength in humanity to adapting to these things. Otherwise, we would not still exist in this world without this kind of resiliency that comes from just adapting constantly to the way the Earth keeps changing. And I think also just acknowledging our contribution to the intensity of these natural disasters. While they are natural, I believe we have way more hurricanes than we used to have. Like the weather itself, weather murder is way more up in terms of ways that we have influenced the environment. And there are also ways that humans can interact with the planet that causes like movement in areas that we wouldn't necessarily want to have movement. But yeah, it's very scary.
It kind of reminds me
but also hopeful.
Yeah. It kind of reminded me of Neon Genesis Evangelion, where it was like the angels are, you know, the next evolutionary thing, and they're like, we're here to just, you know, do our job, which is to take this over. And the fact that humans were like, no, like, you know, a third of the population remained, and they were still like, we got to keep on trying to avoid complete annihilation and preserving like each other and the hope that it was. And that's why like at the end there was this like, you know, philosophical hope in that like we can prevail as humanity just because like we can remember, right? Like other as opposed to other animals, right? Like they're not going to remember. They don't have value in culture and remembering and history, right? That we do. And so as long as we can continue to preserve that, we can continue forward and we can replicate it. We have the science to replicate history and, you know, preserve it in that way too. And I think like the film does or the show does a really great job of showing like so like all the aspects of a natural disaster, because I think so often we get caught in the spectacle. Like I had this conversation with Mike about how I was like, oh, when I was looking up earthquake movies, Godzilla popped up, and that's because to Japanese audiences Godzilla is an earthquake. Like that's what he is representative of, and like the way that their government handles those situations, and that it's like he's also man-made, right? But to an American audience, when we have Godzilla, it's like big monster fight. Like it's so much more about this like we're not learning anything. We're just doing, you know, that like thing. So I think it was such a good
cool
way
big monster man.
Yeah, like, and now it fights other big monster. Woo! Instead of it being like we're talking about natural disasters and our ecological effect on the environment, those things too. Which is why I'm wearing my recycling earrings. I wanted to.
Oh, cute!
Yeah,
I thought they were people or trash earrings. I wasn't sure if that's what it meant.
It could be that as well, but they're like little recycling ones. Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. It's true. People are also trash. I was pleasantly surprised by the turn of it not just being like, oh, it's scary, right? You know, like, oh, big, you know, disasters are scary. When things sink and there's, you know, it's an unstable ground and people you love die. It was so much more than that. It was like again, there's like an earthquake movie with, I think, The Rock, and it's just like, it's just spectacle. It's just for like, look at that. You're not really learning anything. It's just like, it's like when we have Sunshine or whatever, where we sent a nuke to reignite the sun. Like, that's just fun. That's not real science. Yeah. And it's not, you know, like, I don't understand why the logic. It's also like
we're actively afraid of it.
Yeah. And why can't astronauts learn how to mine versus teaching miners how to be astronauts? Like that doesn't add up to me, but this is and the other thing I watched that made me think of this when you're talking about man-made interactions is a film we will not cover probably because of Kat's like fear of the ocean, Underwater with Kristen Stewart, because they're mining. The whole thing is that they're mining and they cause this they awaken things and they cause disasters, and the whole thing was this piece against the propaganda of, you know, natural gas, like, you know, us using our resources and destroying our planet, with, you know, like it's also stressful, like fast-paced action film, but that was also, I was pleasantly surprised because I was like, whoa, this is like BioShock. Like, this to me is like we are subliminally talking about like propaganda and like big gas, like, and also there's monsters here, and the underwater is scary. Why would we be there?
The ocean is so scary. You were live tweeting me while you watched that, and I was like, in no world ever would I want to watch that film. That same goes for Poseidon.
Yes.
I just don't think I could do it. I don't think my brain has the capacity to not immediately dissociate as that movie begins. But it's real. I feel like people feel like humans feel like they are the hottest thing on this planet. You know what I mean? Like they're the doing it. They're like, the planet will do what I want kind of deal. And it's like, the planet's been here. Shut up.
It's
like,
and when it's gone.
I think it's like, too. Yeah. And it's like sad because disaster, is what disaster is. It's devastating. You have people you love who are dying, but that at the same time, the planet is doing what the planet's gonna do. Like it's doing it. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna murder all at once because it was here first. Mm-hmm. It is a giant, horrific murder beast, and it's going to do what it wishes. And we are either going to survive said things or we won't. And the world will go on. And it's sad as all get out. But the planet decides. The planet is the hottest thing on this planet. You know what I mean? It's not us. Mm-hmm. We're not forever. Eventually humans won't be anymore. And that's just going to be a thing.
Yeah.
And whatever other creature that is born will be like, what was that? What are these pyramids? What is this Sphinx? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like they're going to see the things that are left behind and be like, that's strange.
Yeah. Or like maybe they'll see like the social media and the technology that is the history. Like if we are able to preserve that, right, then we, technically still live on. We would just be a story. But yeah, it's very true that like the Earth is just going to
the robots are the next.
Yeah. Because it might be, we can mess up the Earth so much, and then at some point it's just not going to be suitable for us. But the Earth's still going to be here. It's still going to be doing stuff. It just doesn't have people on it anymore because we all killed ourselves. Like, this is how it works. And so it's like, this media serves to kind of warn us of that, and to warn us of like the isolationism, and to value where we come from, but also to be open and, understanding that we need each other. Like we are, at the end of the day, all humans. We are humanity. Yeah. And so it's like, what do we do with that? So, and I think this whole series is going to be a lot of that. Next week, we're going to be talking about tsunamis, which scare Kat and I very much. Like I love the beach. Again, I'm from Florida. I grew up on the beach. But yes. I grew up on the beach. I've been on cruise ships. I watched Poseidon. I was very scared. And I don't know if I'll ever be on a cruise ship again because of it. But yeah, it's it's real. So we'll talk about tsunamis next week. We have a bunch of other natural disasters to talk about this month. So I hope you enjoy it. Make sure that you like and subscribe and, watch our other stuff.
We need to leave the ocean alone.
Yeah.
Just let it be. Never go into it. Just stay far, far away.
Yeah. And also
we isolate ourselves
green energy. Stop, siphoning the things from our Earth that is kind enough to let us live here, and stop doing that, and then we'll be fine.
Yeah. I'm like, history will remember what it does. We can't change it at all. We can try. That's all we can do. Mm-hmm. And if we die and no one remembers our name, then that's sad. But it's what happens all the time.
Okay. Right?
You remember your family, and it's your job to carry the memories on. That's it.
It's your job to put them in the closet. When you don't be like,
not everyone gets a bench.
All right. You know well. Yes, I know what you mean. If you go in, if just for no, if you're gonna memorialize me as a bench, don't make it a bench that has like the houseless person architecture where they put like the bar in the middle, or they make it so people can't sleep there.
That's the worst.
Just so you know, just putting it here.
No, it's bench for anybody.
Yeah, if there's a bench with my name on it, anyone can be
firmly
there. Yes.
I wish to be a tree. I want my ashes to be put with tree, and then I grow into the flower leaves that happen. And then hopefully gross humans do not cut down myself that exists as tree now.
Okay. Yeah, you got it.
It's my dream.
Excellent.
I'm just letting you know.
That's the dream. So that was our episode about
Earthshake murder.
Our episode on Earthshake murder, which is real. It's scary. It's awful. And so next week we'll talk about water crash murder, too much water, real fast murder. So make sure you give us a comment as well. If you like this, if you have, disaster preparedness plans, please share them with us so that we can be more prepared as well. Okay, well, don't get married.
Do it. They'll eat your kids. Or the earth will.